time, I decided not to give my presentation on the digital dramaturgy lab, but we have a good website if you want to learn more about it. There I am. So please, everyone, have a seat. And we will also be open to questions by the audience, obviously. But Roberta will start with an initial question, and then we will continue to animate a discussion between all the panelists. Please come on board, Dark. Find a nice place for yourself. Yep. This one, unfortunately, you cannot except for this one. The reason for that is that I can actually only hear with my left ear, which is why I always have to sit here, so sorry about that. Okay, so Roberta, do you want to start?
Okay, so I went.
This one here is.
Am I very right-handed? So for me, it was not very good. So how did you find the performance? Here we are. Thank you so much. I didn't want to embarrass you, but it was extraordinary. So anyway, especially in this fantastic environment. But one thing that I'm always struck by Marco's work is, and one of the reasons why I invited him in the first place, was that his work is technological, but it's not just about technology. There is the work that you see has to do with technologies, but it gives a different type of interaction with technology. And in some way, all of the people here involved in these labs and in this panel have a particular approach to technologies. There's something to do with ritual, there's something to do with intimacy, but also something to do with like something that troubles you about the relationship between the human being and the machine. And this is something that I would like to hear from Marco and also from the other panelists. So first you.
Well, thanks for having me here, and thanks to those that allowed this to be happening tonight. And so indeed, I work with technology, but my work is not necessarily about it, but more about the relation between technology and the human being, in particular from the point of view of the body. So that's the little corner of this large topic that really interests me. Maybe should I just say a few words about the show? So, okay. So, what's happening there is there is a choreography, there is my body, and I'm half painted in black, and I have some sensors on my arms that capture some signal from the muscular activity. So, now without getting too technical, but they capture sounds from the muscle. So you can think of the heartbeat, that's the sound of the muscle of the heart moving. And they capture also the electrical activity that from the brain sends spikes to the muscle every time you want to move. And that is indicative of general muscular activity, so how abrupt are your movement, how much force you exert with your movement, and so on. So these data then get sent to the computer, and in the computer there is a software running who has some neural network. We heard a little bit during the talk there. Basically, these are mathematical equations that are used for pattern recognition. So if you have a lot of data and you want to find expertise you get on the table, the more chances you have to do strong work. Because obviously everybody can make a strong contribution, And when you have a strong contribution on each of the elements involved in a particular piece, then the transdisciplinarity that is intrinsic to the piece, it comes to the fore. And I think that's quite important, especially for this kind of work with technology.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I started off, my background is in fine arts, so it's pretty much the artist in the studio working. So I developed an interest in new technologies, and I learned everything I needed to, and so I became so-so at programming, and so-so at robotics, and so-so at a bunch of different things. And I was able to create installations. The first one I showed you was an example of that. I'm a good welder, I'm a good, that sort of stuff. But then I started to get more focused and more clear on what I was really trying to do. And so with Recollect, I wanted to have a very particular sound quality. So I designed the whole system. I made my own mics. I programmed the basic thing. I had all the little tools involved. And then at some point I realized, okay, I'm not going to get what I need, so I need to work with a sound designer. And so then from there I bring in more expertise. The piece I'm doing now, though, once again, I prototyped all the basic stuff, but once you get into complicated things that require a certain refinement, I think you need to start bringing in the expertise and working and collaborating. So I work now with a software engineer and a game designer, and I find it actually a fabulous experience. Working with a game designer has literally changed how I think about interactivity, and so it's shaped how I move forward, and so deeply collaborative experiences, I think, do a fabulous thing to the creative act. It changes it. I think you lose a little bit of yourself, but you gain so much more in some pretty impressive and surprising ways.
For our work, it's absolutely understood that it needs to be collaborative, meaning people coming from different disciplines. Like if you build, I think robotics is a great example for a field where one discipline is not enough. You need hardware designer, software designer, ideally human, machine interaction experts. So I usually try to reflect that just in the students I hire, because we are a research lab, we work with students, and we sometimes application domain expertise comes from industry partners who then become very involved. So I think robotics is an interesting field in terms of the academic world. I've seen other fields like machine learning, feedback control. Robotics is extremely open-minded and open to any kind of sensors that they can get their hands on, any kind of computing, because they want to build robots, and it's really hard, and any innovation in any other field is super useful. So I think robotics as a field is, in that sense, very interesting.
So I definitely point taken what Marco said. I think that the level of expertise in transdisciplinary endeavors is it's inspiring when you're working with someone who's taking this extra layer and trying to translate that into what the work is for you, and that is very addicting. I think for me personally, being engaged in the practices of improvisation has been an important point of understanding collaboration. This idea that you can have the ritual, for example, of performance, and deciding that this tacit assumption, this explicit assumption that you will meet and perform, and the way that individual style is played out in the moment in front of an audience is quite special. And for me, it's created a deeper appreciation of human individuality and stylistic differences amongst people. And so I feel that I'm trying to adapt and translate that into the way I'm engendering collaboration within the lab. I hinted at this in my short talk. There's been recently this translation of, so I program my things and I think about designing systems as being a compositional act, and engage obviously in music and sound performance and so on. But translating this into flipping it a bit and then trying to open up my process to work with a large group of students is a wonderful opportunity and challenge. I'm looking at Michael Palumbo right now, who's a graduate member of the laboratory, and he's been instrumental in some of these challenges. For example, I've created a lot of code that people have been asking me to have over the years, and I've never thought there was value in giving the code because I was so focused on the next project and the next performance, and it's also very messy and so on. And I figure, why would you want my code? There's plenty of code in the world. But Michael is very, very into open source and collaborative, creative coding through collaboration, and so it's been a pleasure to work with Michael and several students to think really deeply about collaboration through the act of coding itself. So that, and also opening up for myself, thinking about elements of the design and development process as well as the presentation of that on stage. So it's a wonderful part of the journey, and it's good to be alive.
It's very interesting how everyone is trying to connect and intersect in their own body and mind different disciplines and types of technological knowledges, not all of which we can master, and then we go out and find people to collaborate with us, but still we all need to find some basic understanding of things that we did not actually study. We are not all engineers, and not all engineers are performers, and not all performers are this or that. But I think there's a general openness here with all people to understand that we need more compact knowledge than we usually learn in very specialized disciplinary types of learning, right? We have to be open systems ourselves, it seems to me, which is both a joy but also a challenge to keep up with these things, to actually understand what another person is saying. Because that's not so easy when everybody has a kind of specialized language. Coding being one of, codes being one of those languages. Algorithms, another type of language, I would say. I would like to open the discussion to the audience. If you have questions, here's a microphone, which I will bring to you. If you want to ask something, or say something, or share.
Don't be shy.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
somebody
one.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little far from the microphone.
Hi. Thanks everyone for being here. I have a question to start with Marco, please. What do you want the audience to know about how you create? So, for instance, do you want the audience to know that there would be no sound except for when you move? Or, so what do you want the audience to know? I mean, not really an audience like this, because this is kind of a very insider audience. But for someone seeing this for the first time, what would you want them to know about how the sound is generated?
Nothing. Yeah, well, that's a very short answer. I'm going to articulate. So I actually started doing something between performance art and gestural music. The gestural music, when you perform with sensors and movement control, literally the sound that is being produced through a computer, right? And in that field, it's pretty crucial that the interaction is manifest and it's visible and it's graspable by the audience. I mean, that's part of the field, that's how it is. Of course, you can play with it. There are many great artists who push the edges of this, but you can't escape that. And actually, Corpus Nil is the first piece where I say, okay, I'm going to try something different. And for instance, this is very interesting to me every time I think about it. The whole thing of the paint actually started because I wanted to get rid of my hands, because I was coming from gestural music, and anything I could do with my body was always ending up with waving my hands. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work. I'm going to do this forever. Oh, what do I do? Okay, I'll paint them black. So whatever I do, it's pointless. And that actually was really, really useful. Now, there is a way that connects with your question, is that by erasing my hands, I learned how to use the rest of my body. And by opening up to the rest of my body, I learned much more about the subtleties that you can produce. And with those subtleties, you come into these other territories where you're pretty far from controlling something and manifesting your control of something, but it's more about the intensity of that subtlety, right? So it's not anymore about quantifying where that sound is coming from and why, but it's about experiencing that intensity of the moment and saying, oh wow, sound happened there. So maybe that was connected to something, maybe not. So I actually try to get away from that. And of course, I would be lying if I say that like there is nothing there that is predetermined. Of course, there is a choreography that is starting from somewhere and it's going somewhere else. And there are, I mean, if you need to put a show in a theater, you need to have a certain narrative. It can be as abstract as you want, but there has to be something. And so you can do that while still moving away from control. You can have some points in time where it's not like something happened. And so the audience can grasp that and say, oh, okay, that thing is happening now. And then you move on. But I like to confuse the audience, and I like the audience to actually forget about what they're seeing and entering their experience of what they're being involved with.
It's really interesting how topics of control, agency come up several times here. I think this is one of the discussions we always have when we want to talk about humans and machines. Who is this here? Oh, there you are. I thought I saw you, no?
Me too.
Oh, you too. Okay.
Here you go.
So I have a question about convergence, really. So Marco, your work is very emergent, it's experimental, and it's really interesting. And Angela, your work at the Robotics and Machine Learning Lab is very practical. It's engineering, autonomous drones, self-driving cars, and it's very engineering specific. So where does the emergent actually converge with the experimental? Where do these two worlds actually converge and meet?
You mean the world of efficiency and the world of play, as it often is assumed to be, which is not actually the case, but we will see what happens in your answers.
Yeah, so for us, I presented it in a way what is in terms of what is the ultimate motivation, but in our daily work, it's all about experimentation, right? There's no recipe, there's nothing. Like we do something that hasn't been done, so the daily work is experimentation.
Well, and I've been working with robotics for a couple of years now as well, so I don't claim to have your expertise, but I can certainly say that because I'm working with a neurorobotics laboratory, and what's really important in that field, in my view, is observation. And observation comes only through experimentation. So you do something, and then you have to observe these things doing it, because anything can go wrong. And by observing them, you can also understand better how they work and what their capabilities are. Just correct me if I'm wrong. But I find that in my personal practice, using these machines in performance, that becomes very interesting, because I program them, okay, a little, and then I have to spend 40 minutes looking what they do. It's great.
Okay, so one more question here.
Yes, I just wanted to, it's not really a question, but rather maybe a comment, that after all, even though knowing what was happening in your performance, my ultimate joy came from looking at the work of art that your body had become. So in a sense, I was then thinking that I could actually maybe see it reversed, your body working with what already had been pre-programmed. Although I know the difference would be seen, but still, I just wanted to make that comment that human body that all of a sudden became a mass of something that at so many points of your performance seems disjointed from what we recognize as a human body and becomes something else absolutely fascinating, giving birth to some body that may actually not be human after all. That was absolutely fascinating to me. So I like that element of the human body, even though I knew how much technology was, how important technology was in it. But still, the aesthetics and the final image and the imagery that it invoked was absolutely captivating. So thank you for that.
So we should get going because we are expected. So for those of you who will stay with us, we are exiting and we are going to the Istituto Italiano di Cultura, the Italian Cultural Institute, which is, I don't remember the name, the number, but it's a few blocks up Euron Street. So follow us, follow me.
There will be wine and cheese, and then we can also communicate human to human, which will also be fun, I guess.
Yes. But I also wanted to thank the panel.